Hey, good evening, everyone. Brad Halbrook, State Representative from Shelbyville in the 107th. Welcome to Sunday Night Live, the Conservative Campfire. Chris Miller joins us, Illinois Freedom Caucus Chairman. What's going on, Chris?
Well, I tell you what, I know it's a cliche, but we're always shaking our head and say, you can't make this stuff up. And once again, we have seen our Illinois government at work,
Right.
barely treading water with their nose out. And, we were expecting a budget on Friday, May the 19th. May the 19th came and went. And shockingly, we didn't have a budget. But, they've only known about this for 5 months. And so I can see why they would have trouble. From what I have observed in the way our government functions, I could understand completely why they didn't have this budget done with only 5 months to do it. I mean,
right.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised when the stuff like this happens.
Right. Well, so Chris, that's exactly right. And that's what we're going to dive into here in the next few minutes. And guys, this is a safer, smarter Sunday night alternative to anything else that you can find out there, either on the cable or dish or satellite or on the ether. But so we're going to have continue this relentless pursuit of truth, logic, and common sense. And you're right, Chris. I mean, the statutory deadline remains the same, May 31st. They know when this budget's got to be done, unlike Texas. I think Texas is the only other state that has a 2-year budget. I think every other state has a 1-year budget. But our leadership knows this timeline, right? We've known the schedule. They wanted to be done by May 19th, which was Friday. They wanted to be done. So they set that arbitrary deadline. Or I guess I don't know if it was arbitrary. They just moved it up. Said, we're not going to work through Memorial Day weekend, bump up against May 31st. We're going to try to get done and out of here by May 19th. But guess what? You're right. That's come and gone and no budget. What do you think's going on?
I think one of the most frustrating things is I've only been there. I came in the same time that Governor Pritzker came in to his first term. And the shocking thing is that our budget is growing, depending on what numbers you want to use. Our government has grown at a bare minimum of $10 billion since J.B. Pritzker has been governor. And I think that number in reality is more towards 14 billion. And at the same time, we've lost a congressional seat, which means that we've lost between 750,000 and 1 million people in population. We've been we've been bleeding population. We've been bleeding businesses. We've been bleeding families, and we've been bleeding opportunity. And at the same time, they just want to continue to grow government to an absolutely bloated state. And eventually it's going to explode.
Right. It can't keep up. We talked about this a few weeks ago, that before we adjourned on the House bill deadline, which would have been the end of March coming up to Palm Sunday, when that week that we were on trying to get bills out of the House, I don't remember the number of bills that were there, but I think we could account that several of them would amount to 700-800, maybe not quite that much, but we could account, I think, for 600 to 700 million in new spending, new programs and new spending. And a lot of that was to take up for the new money that flowed in from the feds and the coronavirus dollars that were going to go away. They created all these new programs, and they were going to have to fund them out of general revenue, our income tax dollars. And so that was just the stuff they could account for. A lot of those things, they really couldn't put a figure onto them. For some reason, they were formula-based or population-based. And so they really couldn't put a figure on it. So I don't know if the estimates would have been $1 billion worth of new spending just in those appropriations bills that were passed out of the House. And who knows how many pass out of the Senate similarly to that.
Yeah. Well, and I know that, I think that a lot of times you have to go back and look at the fundamental problem that we're in a mess. And there are solutions, but nobody wants to really look at the solutions. But I think that when you can learn a lot by looking at history. And I know that when you look at the history of our constitutional representative republic. Now, please
Mhm.
keep that in mind. We're a constitutional representative republic. We are not a democracy. One of the greatest fears of our founding fathers is we would become a democracy and it would be mob rule. And
Right.
to a certain degree, in the first couple of years of the Biden administration, that's exactly what we saw. Was there was, Constitution out the door, rule of law out the door. We've got the numbers, and so we're going to tyrannize you. But our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And one of our famous founding fathers, John Adams, made that observation. It was an observation that he had. And another thing that, the people that were in that era had such tremendous insight because, somebody made the observation that democracy is never permanent. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves money from the public treasury. And,
Right.
and if we aren't there right now, I mean, the reason why that we have the mess that we have is because the public puts pressure on politicians to vote to give them money. And
Mhm.
that's the reason why we have out of control spending, why the debt is ballooning both in Illinois and at the
Right.
national level, because they think there's some, I don't know, some money machine or ATM, government ATM, where we get this government money. It comes from the sky like magic, and there's no accountability in the process, and therefore we have a mess.
Right. Right. Exactly. Hey, Chris, hold that thought. We're going to dive back into this a little bit more. We got
Look who's
Representative Dan
here.
Caucus.
Hey,
Hey, Dan, welcome.
give
We're
me.
just getting started.
Hey,
Oh, good. Sorry,
this isn't the General Assembly here, dude.
I know.
we don't
Start on time.
prompt.
I know. Sorry, I apologize. We were working on my newsletter, and it needed a lot of work.
I understand.
Yeah, man. So anyway, good to be with you. What a
Hey.
beautiful weekend. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. The weather could just stick like this for the next 20 years.
Well, it is supposed to be like this all week.
You didn't get the memo. The climate is changing. We're in the pathway of destruction.
Dan, we were just kind of talking about the budget process is kind of not making it, things aren't happening very fast. And we're just kind of talking about our constitutional republic and talking about democracies. And I just found this quote here from James Madison. It says, democracies have been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property. Think about that.
It's true. That's a good quote. That's really good, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
You must eat more bugs. That will save you.
Well, and we've used this little metaphor to describe a democracy. It's like where two coyotes or two wolves and a sheep are trying to decide what's for lunch.
Yeah. Right.
That's good. That's kind of the way it is in Springfield right now. The majority party has basically 2-1 margins over us, and I think they're deciding what's for lunch. And so more bad ideas coming out of the Puzzle Palace or the Bad Idea Factory, or like one of our cohorts texted us this afternoon. What did he call it? The palace or the place of best practices or something. Something about the best practices. We hear a lot about best practices. So that's what's happening in Springfield is a generation of best practices. So yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You have 78 votes. It takes 60 votes to pass a budget.
Right.
And you have, we don't know for sure, but somewhere around 50 billion with a B dollars to spend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what your fixed costs are. I mean, you know what it costs to run the Illinois State Police. You know what it costs to run the Department of Natural Resources. You know what it costs to run, all your departments last year. So that kind of gives you a baseline and then what's left over.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Brett, I mean, that's what you've been doing for the last 2 months in your appropriate committee.
Right.
What's left over? And then you decide, you take your 78 members who can spend that money any way they want. They don't need our input. And you decide what to do with what's left over.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They can't.
Right.
They can't get 60 of them to decide how to spend what's
Mhm.
left over of our tax money.
Right.
That's pretty incredible that they can't get 60 out of 78 to agree upon something. That's pretty amazing. Well, you know, Ronald Reagan said the most terrifying words in the English language were from the government, and I'm here to help you. But we're seeing that play. That's bringing new meaning to that quote by watching government in action.
Right. I know it's insane.
Yeah.
So have you talked about the $1 million payola? I'm sorry, member initiatives. I misspoke.
No, we haven't started talking numbers, but we can dive into that. And I guess let's kind of tee
It's
it up
rumor.
with this. One of the biggest budget pressures we face, I think, right now is this Medicaid or health coverage for this huge flow of illegal immigrants into the sanctuary city, the self-proclaimed sanctuary city we affectionately refer to as Chicago, right? So they're seeing thousands of illegals come in. They want to cover their health coverage. They started this program about 3 years ago, estimated the cost to be somewhere between $2 and $3 million, and is now estimated to be 1.1 to 1.2 billion this coming fiscal year.
Wasn't it originally just for senior citizens?
Right.
We were trying to help help these senior citizens who have some health issues, maybe as they're aging,
Mm-hmm.
and they're spending that money. Obviously, we see a lot of these folks are ended up in nursing homes,
Yeah.
and they have no Social Security number. They have no visa. They're essentially undocumented,
Right.
and they're old, and they're ending up in nursing homes,
Mm-hmm.
and the state of Illinois is paying for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's $2 to $3 million is where it started. Okay, that's okay. We'll put a couple $1 million into a program like that if that's going to help take some pressure off of the healthcare system. But then what happened, Brad?
Yeah, well, they kept adding demographic groups to it. I've got nearly, or hope to have nearly every one of these groups added. And it's something now, I think it's close to 140,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, these costs are just ballooning. I mean, it's, Chris, we talked early just before Dan jumped on about how Pritzker's budgets in the last 4 to 5 years has grown 10 to 12 billion plus. It's any wonder, right? When you have programs that start out at 2 or 3 million, and in 3 years, they're $1 billion. That's 1,000 million.
There's one of the people that are tuned into the broadcast tonight. Rebecca wrote that we would have plenty of time to get a budget done if we weren't busy passing stupid bills that hurt Illinois citizens. But that's true. I mean, you think about all of the stupid bills that we had to look at if we didn't have that to deal with, and if actually we would have been coming to work in the month of January and February and even March and actually doing something besides checking in and going out and partying like rock stars, we had had plenty of time to get all this stuff done. But just because of the lack of any organizational skills, it's like, I thought that Representative Wright made an excellent point the other day. If this was a $50 billion publicly traded company, that the CEO and the people in charge would be going to prison. And I thought that was a great observation that he made. This is true.
Yeah, that was quite a bit of truth there for a lot of our friends to kind of swallow. That was just a huge amount of truth for them to swallow, and I don't know that was taken very well.
That gets you into trouble when you start telling people the truth and being transparent.
Right.
Always get you in trouble.
Never. Yeah, doesn't go well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but it's interesting. I think this is, and I think this is a reflection on the speaker.
Yeah.
I think that the Senate, the Democrats in the Senate are, I think they've come to some understanding. They went home early and they're willing to come back and do whatever. But I think this falls squarely on the shoulders of Speaker Welch and his inability to negotiate. His personality is such that he's I use the word bully.
Mhm.
He's full of himself, and I could see where his management style would irritate someone of equal stature,
Mhm.
Right.
which is the president of the Senate.
Mhm.
And I don't, our members in the Democrat caucus, I don't know how they're going to react to this, because all of them aren't going to get what they want.
Mhm.
They're not. It's impossible. There's too many of them.
Right.
And I mean, this is just another example of poor leadership. It is, you know, you can't bully people into doing what you want to do forever.
Right.
You can get away with it. There was a honeymoon period, so to speak, and you can push people around. You can come on the House floor and talk about, the people of Illinois have sent us here to do our agenda, and we're not going to let anybody stand in the way and point to the Republican caucus like,
Mhm.
we're obstructionists. We're not obstructionists.
Mhm.
In fact, I think we've offered a lot of very common sense, helpful legislation, ideas to help
Mhm.
get this state back on the right track.
Yeah.
And, he's got 78 members of this caucus I think, for one reason and one reason only.
Mhm.
They drew the map.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. Because if you notice, the map is behind me.
Yeah.
And you got to be a really good map drawer to get 78 Democrat seats out of that map. I mean, that's pretty creative drawing to do that.
Right.
Right.
And there's a real disparity. The problem is that the Democrats are the party of bad ideas, and there's a reason why we call that the bad idea factory, is because they can't help but let their ideology of more taxing, more borrowing, more spending, more regulating, taking energy independence away. It's a blueprint to destroy Illinois, if you
Mhm.
just think about it, because they've destroyed safety and security, they've destroyed quality education, they've destroyed economic opportunity, they've destroyed energy independence. The border of Illinois is wide open. We've got all these illegals flooding in here that we can't take care of. We aren't even taking care of our own people, let alone them. But if you sat down and wanted to draw a blueprint to destroy a state and a nation, the Democrats' philosophy of government would do exactly that. And if you think about it, every city or every state that is run by a Democrat governor, it is a course of destruction from Connecticut to Michigan to Illinois to freaking California. Everywhere it is tried, their philosophy fails. But my question is, when are the people going to wake up and quit sending these clowns to their state capital expecting anything but the status quo? It's predictable.
Right.
The mess we have here in Illinois is predictable, and it's all because of poor leadership. It's from everything rises and falls in leadership, just like you said, and that's just the way it is. and these people need to be fired. And I don't know what's going to take to get that done.
I don't know.
Well, we were talking about the $1 billion going into Chicago. 1 in 5 people in Chicago live below the poverty line.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay. All right. So we're going to spend, the state of Illinois, every taxpayer in this state is going to contribute to this $1.1 billion growing number to provide 130 or 40,000 people with health care. The city of Chicago is expected to spend $280 million on housing and other needs for this group of population. And yet they can't even take care of their own. Crime is off the charts in Chicago.
Right.
I mean, Chris, it's a recipe for disaster, like you said.
The best thing we do is turn a luscious environment of everything green into, you said it very well the other day, the deserts of Illinois. You may want to expound on that a little bit. You've got some experience in defining those little, not oases, but deserts.
Right. Well, right. And, Illinois got a lot of things going on. We got interstate transportation, north, south, east, west. We got railway transportation to the same. We've got waterways that lead from the Great Lakes into the Mississippi River, into the Gulf to transport grain and other commodities and things, precious things up and down those river. I mean, all this stuff. It's the richest farmland, most fertile farmland in Illinois, or well, not only in central Illinois, but really probably there's very few places in the world that have as rich a farmland as we have right here in central Illinois. And yet we hear about all these deserts. Most recently, we heard about food deserts, but we hear about childcare deserts. We hear about education deserts, XYZ deserts. And it's like, well, why do we have so many deserts? Well, it's because they failed to grapple with the truth. They failed to grapple with logic and common sense. And they create all this really bad policy. And, going back to Chicago and these crime numbers, we saw in the last few weeks, wasn't it, guys, that Walmart and some other retail stores was closing up because more groceries were being carried out the door unpaid for than they were getting cash for.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that they have all these food deserts. So there was a bill to put $20 million into a grocery store initiative statewide. And it's just more bad ideas. Yeah.
What would taxpayer-funded grocery stores, what philosophy of government would drive that? Would that be free market capitalism or
maybe
communism? Or didn't they try that at Plymouth Colony,
yes,
in the beginning?
Right. So I think everybody needs to go back to their 16th century in the 1700s there and read about Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, the only reason why, where we've lived, I guess that the way to define a food desert is if you don't have a grocery store within 10 miles. Is that the way I got that?
Right.
Well,
unless you live in Chicago.
We haven't had a grocery store within 10 miles as long as I can ever remember. But I mean, it's been a long time since, but people just got used to, in these small towns, Oakland, Newman, Broadlands, you name it, all those little towns, Hume, we've been 10 miles away from a grocery store forever. But the reason why we have that issue here is because of the population shrinking, but when you live in a high population area and you don't have a grocery store, it is a direct result of crime with no consequences. I mean, like Ed mentioned, these stores are being robbed blind. They can't make any money because of the shrinkage. And
I think that's just part of it. I think that's a big part of it. But the other part is the taxes, property taxes,
that's true.
Payroll taxes, unemployment taxes, workman's comp taxes. We've got, is there some? No, that's just me. I thought somebody hopped on. I'm going, hey, we got another member. I mean, it's the business climate in Illinois. And when you operate a major corporation or a stock brokerage company, Boeing, Cat, I don't, go down the line.
Yeah.
You can afford to move. You can afford to move. If you have a grocery store, and the grocery stores traditionally have very low profit margins. They're not a huge money maker. They make it up on volume. And when you have a declining population, like you said, Chris, then your number of customers disappear. Well, where did that population go?
Right.
Well, it left with the jobs.
Right.
And it left with, tired of being taxed out of their homes.
Right.
And so you have that problem in our rural communities. And then you put all of the other costs on top of it, and you just can't make a living, running these small independent grocery stores in rural areas anymore. So what's this bill going to do? I don't know.
Right.
They've got all the government agencies up there, Yahoo, all the time, trying to find something wrong with the way they're conducting business, and then fine them.
Yeah, right.
It's a beautiful thing.
Well, and it's because their produce wasn't labeled properly. I mean, we went through this in one of those committees last year. They, want their produce something, I don't know. I mean, it's just frustrating as heck that, what we have to go through.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing too is, guys, is these energy costs have skyrocketed. And boy, in a grocery store, when you rely so much on refrigeration to keep stuff cold or frozen, that's a high cost. That's just driving their cost of doing business up like crazy. So
I'm guessing that most of their electric bills were pretty high to start with.
Right.
But just think about what we've done with this green bad deal, where everybody's electric bill is either doubled or tripled. Now, if you take that and multiply it to a business or a grocery store where they're a high usage, I mean, you got a real problem in the cost of doing business here.
Right.
Oh man, yeah, keeping your freezers and refrigerators going, cooling, heating and cooling the open store. I mean, it's just. I think it's an impossibility. But we're going to throw 20 million at it.
Right. Socialized grocery store. Well, and some can make an argument maybe that Walmart was to the destruction of some of our small towns, and then maybe you could sprinkle in there that Amazon out Walmarted Walmart, but yet Amazon, I don't know, in central Illinois, they're delivering groceries. I mean, I think they've made a play in some grocery markets with some different things, but I don't know that it's like, I mean, it's not like it was, or like a Walmart has groceries. It's, there is something there, but yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about a couple bills real quick. Senate Bill 1818. They want to redesign our state flag. So Illinois is 205 years old, or will be this summer. And there's a bill. This will solve all of our problems, right? We're going to redesign the state flag. I just found it was just amazing that we've got time to worry about redesigning our state flag.
I don't think it has enough color in it.
Yeah, I can't imagine what these guys will come up with when it comes to redesigning the state flag. It'll be almost comical. It'll be comical but tragic also with what they come up with. They can do anything they want to,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The other big bill this week was to kind of continue on with their desire for equitable bathrooms or restrooms in public places, non-gender or multi-gender, multi-stall restrooms. Guys, Dan, you made the call to the architect of the Capitol's office and asked him for specifics on that. And it was kind of chilling that the sponsor of this bill, right, Dan, I can let you speak to this, hadn't talked to the architect about the impact.
No, and the bill itself is, somewhat innocuous. I mean, it sets up a new building code in Illinois, so that if you want to construct a gender neutral bathroom, this is the guideline.
Mm-hmm.
So what they've done is they step back, you know what they want, but they step back from that, one click. And now they're saying, no, we're not mandating gender neutral bathrooms anywhere. We're just saying if you want to convert or you're building and you want to make gender neutral bathrooms, these are the requirements. This is how they have to be done. Okay, fine. But you know what's coming next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
You know what the next step is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We want gender neutral bathrooms in all public places. It's coming.
Right.
That's the next step.
Right.
And the architect, a very, very nice lady, running his huge projects in Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
was like, what? What are you telling me?
Right.
Well,
It's going to come. It's going to, trust me. You and I know it. We all know it. This was just the what do they say? The camel's nose under the tent.
Right.
Now that we have architectural specifications for gender neutral bathrooms, now we can impose them.
Yeah, y'all need to write that down. May the 21st, 2023. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Gender neutral bathroom coming to every restroom in Illinois.
At least in
It's going to be a game changer.
at least in public building and government buildings.
Yeah.
That's where it'll start. Just like the styrofoam ban. That was fun. Are we done? Are we done with gender neutral bathrooms yet? Have we beat that up?
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. I know you talked directly with the architect. I was there in the room. I think she said that in the Capitol, was there 40?
40. There's
40 whatever, right?
There's 40 stalls or 40
stalls, right?
Yeah.
But then
Capitol.
in the new construction that they're doing, which is like a $400 million project plus or minus, there's 40 additional stalls there. Now the question, I don't know that you ask, and I just happened to think about it. Are they designing these to these new standards?
No.
Even though the sponsor said this is not mandated, I think you and I disagree. As we read the original language, it talks about a mandate in there. The sponsor disagreed, but I'm curious, did you ask that, or did she say that they're building those under the new construction to those potential standards?
No, I asked her, and she didn't have any idea that this bill was going through to be the law.
Yeah.
And no, everything that they're doing was designed years ago. I mean, it was designed and approved years ago and now being put in place. I don't know what the Capitol building construction deadline is, but all of the other stuff, the parking lot and all that whole big project is supposed to be done next year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're working away on it, just north of Stratton,
right,
and between the two complexes in that open space. That's all supposed to be done sometime next year.
Right.
So no, they had no idea. She was like freaking out.
Yeah.
I think what she say 144 public stalls
in the Stratton, or in the Stratton building.
Yeah, just in Stratton, I think 44.
Right. Well, we've probably whipped up on that one enough. What else is on you guys' mind? I know we got a question here about the budget. We'll close out with in a bit. I think we need to kind of help people clarify on that so they have an understanding of what we're up against for the next week or 10 days. Chris, do you have any other thoughts or anything you want to talk about?
Oh, not really. I know we've been at this for 35 minutes. We don't want to wear everybody out and have to put them on bad information overload.
Well, let me bring this question in, Dan, and see if this shows up. So the question is, what happens if the Dems can't come to an agreement this week on a budget or by the 31st? You want to answer that, Dan?
Well, I said this to a couple of our Democrat colleagues. They didn't They didn't give Rauner a budget for 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
The state operated without a budget under Governor Rauner because the Democrats refused to come up with a budget because they knew he'd line item veto and they couldn't override the veto.
Mhm.
So they just didn't have a budget, and they blamed Rauner for it. And good PR, and you've got the press on your side, and you make the first move. But hey, what are you going to do if there's no budget?
Right.
They'll just, I mean, they're going to spend the money the way they want it anyway.
Right.
What the heck?
Somehow this will be our fault.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how, 78 to 40, but it'll be our fault.
Yeah.
Those
So let's just
Republicans are at it again.
let's kind of walk everybody through. So it takes 3 days to move a bill through the General Assembly, through both chambers.
And we want to talk about that. That's important. This is the first time we've seen that, because normally they'll drop the budget on Thursday night and we voted in on Friday.
Right.
And they dropped the BIMP and, over in the Senate on Thursday night. And we vote on it Friday, and the Senate votes on the budget on Friday. Because of these lawsuits and all of the scrutiny that's been placed on the process in the General Assembly, not following the Constitution,
Right.
all of a sudden they'd go, maybe we don't want to do that again.
Right.
Maybe we actually want to do what the Constitution says we should do, and the bill should be read on 3 separate days.
Right.
Now, some of this stuff is, suspend the reading, and it means nothing. I mean, it goes through unanimously, and we don't care. Get it off the table, move it along. But these important bills, the Safety Act, the gun control bills, the budgets, have traditionally suspended the reading and voted on them because they could do that.
Right.
Now these lawsuits in the Safety Act and in these Gun Control Bill Act,
Mm-hmm.
I think have gotten their attention, and I want to thank everybody that's participated,
Right.
everybody that's had pushed back on this process. Just like the consent calendar that we got wiped out this year.
Right.
It's no fun sitting around voting on 125 bills that have no opposition, but at least every one of those bills gets read into the record.
Right.
The sponsor has an opportunity to present that bill, to give the intent of that bill before it gets passed.
Right.
And it's tedious, but it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I'm done.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It winds me up.
And I think you're right. And I hadn't really thought about that, Dan, but this scrutiny about having a bill that's been read 2 times and they drop a gut and replace amendment that's these 4,000 page or 700 page amendments, whatever it is, right? But the budget bills are typically 4,000 pages. They drop them, waive the posting requirements. They do them in an hour, and nobody has time to even hardly look through them and count how many pages there are, let alone begin to analyze what the content of 3,000 or 4,000 pages is in an
Right.
And
hour.
then have limited debate.
Yeah. And so it just
Yeah,
leads to really bad policy making once again. So, yeah. But again, so to draw the close the circle up, the statutory deadline is May 31st, which is, I think, Wednesday night, a week from now. They can pass anything with a close up or an effective immediate date. Has to have 60 votes. If it goes to June 1st, takes 71 votes. That's kind of key difference there between May 31st and June 1st. It takes more votes to pass the same thing.
Out of the 78 members.
Out of 78 members. Right.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
they don't need us.
Right.
And they still can't do it.
Right. Exactly. All right, Chris, Dan, we've been here 40 minutes. Any closing comments? And then we're going to go.
Looking forward to seeing you all Wednesday.
Can't wait. Chris?
Hey, keep hope alive, because all the problems in Illinois have been because of bad public policy. The Dems did this. And so it's all fixable, but you just got to send good people to the General Assembly that are going to allow the Constitution to prevail, and the rule of law, and everything that all the problems that we have created have been man-made, and so we can fix them. It's just a matter of you all out there in the audience have to keep the pressure on these rascals to do the right thing and turn Illinois into the destination state that it should be.
Right. Exactly. Chris, with that, and I just want to remind people to join us this coming Tuesday night, and I hope that everybody had a chance to view our town hall roundtable live stream from last Tuesday night with Jocko Bullions as he talked about the border and what was going on down there. Guys, we're going to try to bring you great live streams here throughout the coming days and weeks and months, and we're planning lots of stuff to be in person this summer, starting in June and across the region. So look for us there. And with that, guys, I'm going to say good night, and we'll see everybody Tuesday night and hopefully Wednesday in Springfield. Good night, everybody.